event is geared, of course, to our middle school students and families for our James McHenry. I'd like to thank, of course, Jack and Jill Baltimore chapter for partnering with us today. I'd also like to thank University of Maryland Baltimore Community Engagement Center, Tyrone Roper and Danielle Harris for offering up this space today. I'd like to thank the teams from Jack and Jill as well for volunteering their time and service today. You guys are greatly appreciated. And I also like to thank the parents. Today's event is really important, especially to our youth. And of course, this is our first event that we've had in person since, oh my gosh, what was it? 2020, March of 2020. So this is really exciting for us. So I want you guys to, of course, our teens here from Ingenuity, to ask plenty of questions today. Also, this is an opportunity for you to learn about different avenues in STEM, and then also learn from the teens about their high school experience. So take on this opportunity to learn, to grow, and to also build relationships. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We can do better than that. It's 10 a.m. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. So happy to see all of you today. For those of you who have joined us in person, for those of you who have joined us virtually, we're just so excited. We have spent months planning today's event, and we are just truly grateful for all of you to make the sacrifice to join us today. My name is Annette Anderson, and I am the president of the Baltimore chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. But also, I am a resident of Baltimore City, and I think that we all know that we have a great opportunity to pour into our young people, both our teens and our middle schoolers, to help all of them get prepared for their next steps. College is a huge step for all families as they start to consider what it will take for children to be successful as they graduate from high school and matriculate into their post-secondary options. And so we are very, very grateful that we've been able to partner with Ingenuity to be able to bring this event about. I want to specifically thank Lisette Morris, who I have known for many years as a colleague. She's been such a great resource in so many ways. And so if we could just give her a hand for all the work that she has done on behalf of Ingenuity. And I want to thank her in particular because she was the one who saw the vision for bringing Ingenuity to James McHenry. And a few years ago, we were part of a team that scouted different schools to look at where Ingenuity could take place. And I'm just so thrilled that James McHenry became the next Ingenuity location because it extends options to our bright and gifted young people in this city. And we get to hear often about the negative narratives and stereotypes about young people in our city. And so when we get to see new opportunities to lift them up and to promote them, we're just very grateful. I also want to thank Jocelyn Harris. Jocelyn Harris is the director of middle school for the Ingenuity program. If we could also give her a big hand. She has also been such a great support and resource in helping to pull today together, reaching out to the families, helping to figure out what our connections could be so that we can make this event come alive. And so, this was a dream that we had over the summer. The Ingenuity Project received a $10,000 grant from the Jack and Jill Foundation. And one of the stipulations of the grant was that we would work together on a forum of this type to bring together our families from Jack and Jill with the families of James McHenry to talk about what it means to be a first-generation college student and how our students should be planning, all of them, for this next step to college. And so we're just very, very grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this. From our chapter, I want to specifically thank Angie Genmeadow. I don't see Angie. Where are you? Thank you. If we could give her a hand, too. We have had numerous late night calls from 8 to 9:30, even later. And I just want to thank her because she always made it a priority to be a part of those calls as we were planning today. And just thank you for her service. And as our lead teen advisor, she has done a fantastic job of leading our teens and helping them to prepare for today. Likewise, I want to thank our fabulous community service chair, Dr. Shelby Stewart Kennedy. If you could raise your hand, if we could give her a hand as well. She believed in this project from the beginning in her heart and knew that it was important. Both Angie and Shelby are HBCU graduates, and they saw the power that this event could bring for the community and for our young people. So I just want to say once again to everyone, thank you for joining. To all the parents who have come today, let us help and be a resource in any way that we can. We want to open ourselves up to you. Please see us. I'm looking forward to our teens connecting with our middle schoolers so that they can share about their high school careers and what they had to do in middle school to get prepared for high school. It's important for each of us to reach one and teach one, and people did that for all of us, and that's how we all got here. None of us got here on our own. We did it because people believed in us and made a path for us. So we're happy to do that as well, as that is our responsibility. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you. And next, I'm going to turn it over to the team who's going to introduce our keynote speaker. Very exciting. Thank you. Our team president, Jaden Reveille.
Jalen Clark is from Owings Mills, Maryland, and is currently matriculating at Harvard University John A. Paulson School of Engineering, pursuing a Master of Science in Data Science degree. She credits her academic foundation to Spelman College, where she obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics with honors as a member of the graduating class of 2021. During her time at Spelman, Jalen received academic and departmental honors, including membership in the National Society of Collegiate Scholars and the Alpha Lambda Delta Honor Society. While serving as a research assistant in the Spelman College Math Department, she also held leadership roles in several organizations, including the Spelman SGA, the Math Club, and the Mu Pi chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She was selected to participate in the Bank of America Full-Bridge program by Spelman College in January 2018, where she received valuable leadership skills and training to aid her in succeeding in the workplace. The following year, Jalen was proud to be named Toyota Push Excel Scholar, which included a $75,000 scholarship and 2 information system internships with Toyota at their headquarters in Plano, Texas. She was also named a Deloitte HBCU Emerging Leaders Scholar and received a $10,000 scholarship towards her graduate studies. Jalen will complete her second internship with Deloitte this summer as a business technology consulting intern. She is also passionate about giving back to those in need, particularly providing meals to those who are food insecure. Jalen was a member of the Baltimore chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated from 2008 to 2017 and served as both team corresponding secretary and team vice president. Please welcome Jalen Clark.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Jalen, and today I want to just share the story of my journey to where I am now. As stated before, I was a math major in college, and the journey to choosing that major was not exactly linear. I've always loved math from a very, very young age. I think when I was maybe 5 or 6, I started using math, counting money. And I just really loved how tangible and stable it is. There's only one right answer, and that was something that I really enjoyed. My school, when I was in elementary school, kind of leveled.
Recording in progress.
So when I was in first grade, I was asked to move up a level in math. And I remember just being one of the only African American students in the school and, being a girl and being told, that maybe math isn't for you and I should stick to English. I felt really unqualified to make the shift. But in the next year, I did make the shift to the higher math class, and I thought it was great. I mean, I remember being in the class and being really competitive. There was one kid in the class, and we used to race to see who could finish our BCRs first. I don't know if they still have BCRs, but that's brief constructed responses in math. Solve the problem and then say why it's right. And I thought that was super fun. In 5th grade, when I switched schools, they had covered a lot of the math that I had previously done. So I remember teaching my class long division and just feeling really great about doing math and being able to show it to others. When I shifted to middle school, I didn't feel the same level of support and encouragement from teachers and faculty. And I started to think maybe math wasn't the right path for me. I remember, my English teacher was really supportive. We had a really great relationship. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be doing math anymore. in 7th grade, there was like a take your daughter to work day, and I went to work with my mom, and I met the actuarial department. Basically, actuaries are like super math based, and they like are in charge of why insurance works, pretty much. And that kind of got me interested in math a little bit more, but I was still very much so, maybe I'll stick with English. When I got to high school, I was moved down from like the top level to the second level out of 4. And I was like, okay, I guess that means that I'm not supposed to be doing math. And I just really focused on English. I took a lot of English classes. I really liked my teachers. But then I started excelling in my like level 2 classes. And I was given the opportunity to move back up and take calculus my senior year. And I remember I got to the calculus class and I had that same feeling from first grade of just not feeling qualified, not feeling like I was going to successfully make it through the end of the semester, not feeling like I was fully grasping the material. And I made the decision I'll stick with, the level I was in then. And I didn't finish calculus. I just took other math classes, and that was the right decision. I was able to meet 3 different teachers because calculus was year-long. I was able to take 3 semester-long classes instead. So I had a little bit more exposure to different math concepts, and I met different teachers who really supported and encouraged me and brought me back to the same feeling that I had as a child of really loving math and loving where I was at. And so when I applied to college, because I was so focused on English, I applied to be an English major when I started matriculation, but my letters of recommendation, one was for my English teacher and one was for my math teacher. So there was room for movement within my major. When I began college visits, I thought a lot about what I wanted from my college experience. College isn't just a place to go to school. It's where you're going to spend 4 years of your life, very formative years. And I knew personally that I did not want to feel unqualified or like the only in any classroom. So although I applied to a very diverse selection of schools, I applied to Franklin and Marshall, University of Maryland College Park. I applied to Spelman College, Agnes Scott, which is an all-girls school in Georgia, in Decatur, Bryn Mawr, and a couple other. I had a long list. And ultimately, I narrowed it down to Spelman College and Bryn Mawr because both of them were all women's institutions, so I would never feel like I wasn't qualified because I was a woman. And Agnes Scott was actually very interesting in that even though it's not an HBCU, it is majority people of color who attend. I think it was like 67% in 2017. So I wanted to, go to a school where I felt very comfortable. I visited all the schools I applied to, and ultimately I chose Spelman because even though I could see myself at every school I applied to, Spelman felt like home. And I think it's really important to feel very comfortable when you're pursuing your degree so that you have the most support, not just like in terms of teaching, but emotionally and personally. So I chose Spelman. It's also where my mom went, and my sister's there now, but I chose it mostly because it just felt like the right choice for me, and not just because my mom had previously gone. So after I chose college, I received my first scholarship from an actuarial foundation. And that confirmation was the push I needed to choose math as my major in college. Choosing math, like Calculus 1 is not necessarily the easiest of math classes, especially if you just haven't seen the material before. The concepts are, I want to say, a little complex. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. And my teacher was really supportive. I met with her often, office hours. Having good study habits, it's really important when you're in a STEM field. And I didn't just take math. I had to take computer science and physics and biostatistics. Like, when you choose a STEM degree, you're often going to see very different types of science throughout your matriculation. And it was just like the right environment for me to pursue a STEM degree. I think one thing I love about the HBCU experience is the support you're going to get there is unparalleled. Not only is it support from your teachers, but in every single class I took, there was a community sense. Like everyone in the class wanted everyone in the class to do well. So you were able to work together and form just a really good camaraderie and a sense of belonging in the classroom. So I stuck with math and I did really well. My first 3 semesters, I had a 4.0 and I was invited to tutor math classes. And it just kept reaffirming. It was a positive feedback loop. Every time I would do well in a class, and even when I didn't do perfect in a class, I felt very encouraged because I knew it was something I really liked. And a lot of people don't stick with their STEM degree. It's difficult. There are challenges that you face. But you have to remember that you're very qualified for what you're doing. So at the end, toward the ends of my matriculation, when it was time to apply for graduate schools and graduate school programs, there were a lot of different options. You don't have to stick with your major from undergrad. You don't have to stay in STEM. But I knew for me personally, I really enjoy STEM. And data science is a combination of statistics, math, and computer science. And I want to further my education and knowledge, not just with math, but adding in statistics and computer science. And that's kind of how I got to where I'm at now. My biggest takeaway is in the moments where you feel unqualified, remember your passion and remember your why.
How you doing, Jalen? Are you currently in a data science role, profession, or are you still in school? Are you still in graduate school, or are you actually focused in that actual role right now?
Currently in graduate school, so this is my first semester at Harvard, and it's a 3-semester program.
Okay. Have you interned at all yet, or worked in that role yet?
Not directly in a data science role. I've done 3 internships working with data, one in data analytics, one in a computer science field, and then one in actuarial science.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of experience with data science, but I chose this program so that I would have the background and the programming knowledge to go into the workforce and actually apply it.
And then what classes in your undergrad do you think were most important to what you're seeing now in preparation for data science as a major?
I think having a strong math background is really useful. I wish I had a little bit stronger of a computer science background because a lot of the classes do use basic programming, and depending on the school, some schools have like an intro to Python or an intro to C++ program class within their master's program. Mine does not, so I've been kind of self-teaching Python, and at this point I'm pretty proficient in it, but that's something that would be super useful going in. And then good statistics knowledge. Data science often uses statistical processes to predict on data sets. So having a good background in statistics, beginner level computer science in any program, and then a good math foundation is key.
Hi, Jalen. My name is Kirsten Watkins. I just had a quick question. So what is like the main difference between Harvard and Spelman?
There's lots of differences. I think that I'll start with a similarity. What I like about both schools is that they provide an environment of like learning, like people who go to school want to learn things. And I think that's super useful. Diversity at Harvard is very, very different. And something else that's different, it's much bigger. So like I can walk all of Spelman's campus, like do a like loop around it in maybe like 10 minutes, and it would probably take me over an hour to do a loop around all of Harvard.
Hi, my name is Logan. I just wanted to know, like, what are your plans after grad school, and have they changed over like the course of your education?
Yeah, my plans after grad school, I would like to work in data science for a company. I'm not really married to a field right now, but just like, a corporate data scientist is my goal. And yeah, my plans have changed dramatically. When I started in college, I thought I was going to graduate and be an actuary. And then when I changed from not wanting to be an actuary, I thought I was just going to graduate and be a data analyst. And then I thought about data science, and I was like, I'd rather be a data scientist than an analyst. So it's changed, and it'll probably change one or two more times throughout life.
How you doing, Jalen? One more question. So I studied engineering, and when I came out, software wasn't as big, so we learned a lot of hardcore stuff in engineering. But then when I got into the work field, it's like everything was done by an application or a tool. I didn't have to hand calculate anything. What are some of the hottest skill sets that you think are related to data science? Is even maybe tools, things like that, that some of the students can start to not only as they do the hardcore stuff, but if they want to think about some tools, you mentioned Python, I'm familiar with that. What are some of the other skill sets, some of the tools that they can just listen out for, maybe if they come across those in high school, et cetera?
Yeah, I definitely think with data science, at least for me, knowing like Python and then like thinking about like just the applications in the world, like in my current math class, we've actually done something very similar to facial recognition. So you can pretty much like whatever you see in the world or you see a gap for or a need for can be automated using some sort of code. I think that this is like a great space to start thinking about like what isn't automated right now and what innovations could be made. Currently, I think Python, C++, Linux, those are the top in terms of programming languages. And I think just having an inquisitive mind would be useful as well.
I'm David, and my question is, why should somebody choose HBCU over, say, a state school or, say, an Ivy League school?
Yeah, I think at HBCU, in my experience, especially for other people who chose STEM degrees, is a place where you have a support system, you have a network, and I don't believe you can leave without some sort of opportunity. I think that the great thing about the age we live in now is that a lot of different companies and a lot of different programs are funneling opportunities to HBCUs. I know that my DeLitt scholarship I would not have qualified for if I was not an HBCU student, and being an HBCU student made me highly competitive for the Toyota scholarship, which was sponsored by Jesse Jackson. So I think that having that, HBCU next to your name opens the door for opportunities. Going to an HBCU instead of a PWI means that you have more of a camaraderie with your other classmates, and you don't have to worry about being the only in the classroom and then worrying about whether or not the actions that you have received are race-based. I never for once thought, oh, like I'm being discriminated against because the whole classroom looks like me. So if I was being discriminated against, it wasn't going to be because of race or, because I was a woman, because I went to an all-women HBCU. And I think that it helps with confidence and the resources. HBCUs tend to be smaller, so the resources aren't spread as thin as big public universities.
Hello, Jalen. So say you are interested in a STEM career, but you're not great at math. You talked about having a 4.0 GPA, but that doesn't happen for everyone. Should people give up if they don't feel like they are a star student with a 4.0 GPA now? And in high school, should they be dissuaded from math if they don't have the top grades in their math class from pursuing a STEM career?
Yeah, I would just say let your passion drive you. There were tons of times my grades in math weren't fantastic. And at this point, especially like being in grad school, I have a new outlook. I'm here to learn. I think the end grade isn't necessarily the most important. If it's a skill you really want to learn, something you want to stick with, I say go for it. Some people do end up switching majors, but usually not to a completely different school. Like you wouldn't switch usually from STEM to humanities. You might switch from math to economics, or you might switch from biochem to health science. Like there are other options that might be better suited so that you're not spending too much of your time and expanding resources on something that's more complex. But you don't have to be top of your class to be an HBCU student, and it's complicated. Like usually for most schools, the grading scale for STEM classes is skewed and not the same as like humanities courses. So maybe for humanities, a 90 to 100 would be an A. I remember in physics, it was like anything over an 85 was an A. Like it's very skewed because they know the material is a little bit more difficult. And also grades and tests do not always measure understanding to a T. And that's something I always keep in mind as well.
I would like to thank our keynote speaker. Thank you, Ms. Jalen Clark, for coming to speak with us. Now I would like to introduce our set of panelists. We have Dr. Chantel Campbell, Kevin Meadow, Nicole Brown, and Neil Alvanzo. Thank you for coming to speak with us. So, first question is, tell us a little about yourself and your interests, some of your education experiences, and let the crowd know what you do professionally.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chantel Campbell. I'm a native of Miami, Florida. I am in the federal government space right now as a branch chief, helping the federal government transform their development practices into more of an agile type perspective to ensure that we're getting things out to the customer at a faster pace as opposed to what it's been in the past. I'm passionate about all things education around girls in STEM, and I am looking forward to continuing to progress in those respective arenas and looking forward to conversating with y'all today.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nicole Brown, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. Graduate of Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, Morgan State University. Yes, go Poly. We hope we beat City today. Graduated with my master's from Towson University. I am a branch chief also for Social Security Administration. In my area covers a different side of IT. I don't know, many of you may not have heard of the mainframe. That's the old big dinosaur system. But that's where I operate, my team operates from. We maintain the top secret security for the agency and also the web infrastructure for the agency and automated operations. I am passionate about education. I'm passionate about women in technology because coming along, it was a lot of Indian men who taught me technology at Morgan, and it's a lot of men in that field. So it's not easy for us. So definitely passionate about that, and I look forward to answering your questions today.
Good morning. Kevin Meadow. I'm currently in a IT program and project management. So my experience goes back to quality assurance is included in that, agile development. I've been a DBA developer. So a lot around software. And then my background is I went to Morgan State University, graduated with electrical engineering degree. I also have a master's from NJIT in New Jersey in engineering management. So my passions, we can always, I've gone to 2 HBCUs, 1 PWI for masters. We can always talk about band. I was in the marching band. My passion is also really, I find coaching, mentoring, and I like to see that everyone have, outside of your academics, some sort of extracurricular activities, whether it be sports, music, anything, because all that's for you in college and can get you money as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Neil Alvanzo, and I'm not a Marylander. I grew up in Boston, and coming down to Boston, I attended a school in Washington, D.C. Some of you may have heard of Howard University. Proud graduate of Howard. I'm what you call right now an engagement manager, senior engagement manager. So I've got teams throughout the U.S., and we're installing software. I help companies optimize the way that they do business. After finishing college, I went on to graduate school in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins. So a different perspective, different experiences, but I'm really excited about the opportunity to be here and with the panelists and learn from each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, can our panelists describe what was it like growing up and your school experience, and how did that influence where you went to college?
Wow. Okay, I've got the mic, so we'll go down. Okay, so I don't know by show of hands, has anyone been to Boston? All right, there you go. Okay, cool. So I grew up in Boston. Boston's really different than Baltimore in some ways, and in terms of things to do. So did not know a lot about HBCUs, but I wanted a bigger experience. Did not have great grades throughout middle school and high school, so I was kind of lost, but I managed to connect the dots really quickly. For my experiences growing up, I wanted to really expand who I was as a person. I think my exposure through reading, through talking to people, wanting to say, hey, listen, my environment's not going to dictate who I am. So visited the university, fell in love with it, fell in love with the people, the culture, the experiences. And for me, that was the beginning of a wonderful journey. So I hope that answered the question.
I've got more. We'll go down the line. My journey, I'll just say in elementary school, first grade, is similar to what Jalen was talking about. So I was placed into what we called a talented and gifted program. There were only about 10 kids in that program. They used to pull us out of our first grade class, take us into like the media room and do all these extra activities. And it was fun. So I would say from the very start, they made learning motivating for me. They also did extra activities in math and science and things like that. Fourth grade. And my school was John Carroll Elementary School in Landover, predominantly almost all Black at that time. Fourth grade, they integrated us. They started busing kids from everywhere. They called it a science and math magnet. It was a new program. It was more challenging, more competitive. You had kids coming from everywhere. When we did that, it gave us more exposure to math. Like Jalen said, they bumped you up a math. They bumped you up a science. So it was a little bit harder. You had to learn some additional things. Going to middle school, same thing Jalen said. I came out of top of the class, elementary school, had been in tag, was Mr. Everything. When I got to middle school, it was everybody was the Mr. or Mrs. Everything from their elementary schools. So it's like this program, math and science, all the top kids from almost all around the county. So very competitive. Got my first C in math and was like, what is that? I used to been, kind of getting the A's and B's, up there. I think my first GPA was maybe 3.1. It was devastating, right? I had a C on there, all that, but it didn't take me away. I just think that the teachers were just blowing through it, right? They had all these smart kids. They felt like they could move fast, and they just didn't slow it down and connect with us. Got through that, went to high school, looked at biotechnology programs and things like that, got in there. Great teachers, again, was motivated, but it took me away from, middle school took me away from science and magnet. When I went to high school, I said, I'm not going to science and magnet. Did it in elementary school, middle school, just rubbed me the wrong way. So when I went to high school, went to a total different school, got into a biotechnology program, did some other things and made some options there. But, I keyed in on what Jalen said because, she talked about the same thing where, some of the teachers and, how they can motivate you or not, how you can not feel like, this is for you. And I, in seventh grade, I had questions like, why am I getting C's now? Like, in my other school, I was doing great. So that's the thing, and it can make you make some other decisions. It took me away from science and magnet. I truly could have stayed with it. Things might have been different, but I think I still, made some great decisions along the way.
So school for me in Baltimore, I went to a Catholic school. It was St. Matthew's School, which is now Cardinal Sheehan. And so when I started off at St. Matthew's, it was a predominantly white Catholic school, so it wasn't as many black kids in the class, which was it was okay. I grew up, as people say, didn't really see color as a little girl. I was in the top classes when I first started going through first, second, third, fourth, fifth. But then as time went on, I struggled. So the teachers, they met with my parents and they bumped me down a class. But that still didn't stop me from excelling in school. My parents were always big on education. You know, they preached that in our home. My dad is a graduate of Morgan State University, so he had the opportunity to go to college. My mom didn't have the opportunity until after she was older. So for us, we're coming out of Cardinal Sheehan, my parents said you have three options. You can go to a Catholic high school, or you could go to Poly or Western. That was it. I said, well, what about City? Poly, Western. That was it. So I chose Poly at my church. We have a very big Poly City rivalry, and we have some Western women who are there. My mom is a Western grad. Went to their open houses. I love the atmosphere of Poly. I love the engineering courses that they were offering. So going into Poly, I was not A course, I was B course. But the math classes were very accelerated. I don't know if we have any Poly students in here, but it's accelerated math. And when I got to Morgan, actually tested out of some of the introductory math classes at Morgan, because, you know, by the time you hit your senior year, you were in Calculus 1, Calculus 2, and all of that other great stuff. So for me, that's all I knew in a home was education. There was, you know, some kids worked in high school. My parents didn't want us to work. They wanted us. That was our job. And I tell my son that now. Your job is to go to school and make good grades. My job is to provide for you and make sure you can live a certain level lifestyle.
So, growing up in Miami, it's similar to aspects of Baltimore. I was a scholar during my, initial years of school, and so good that I was bused. I was bused down to this area called Coral Gables, Florida, which was where the affluent lived, lots of wealthy people. That was not like my neighborhood. So academically, I struggled because it was, being bused 2 hours to a school, then coming back to my environment that really didn't match. But in my home was that built around education, love, understanding, and knowing that I was not a product of my environment. So going through middle school, I couldn't take the pressure of being bused in an environment that I really could not relate to. I didn't find kids that I related to and things of that nature. So academically, I struggled to the point to where it was questioned that I had I had emotional issues, that I had I had a learning disability. And that learning disability was dyslexia. So with that, my mother attempted to and did everything that she could to make sure that I got the services that I needed, because in that environment, they were not offered to me. I was labeled and put in a corner. So I went back to my local junior high school, which was what they call it when I was in school, which is now middle school. And I got the services that I needed. And it was in these inner city schools that I found educators that loved me, that saw that I was labeled, but that's not who I was or what my potential was. But once I understood that, it took a while for me to understand that. It was in high school, I was, again, always a good student, not the best. But it was until I went to college, I found a teacher at Alabama State University that saw something in me that I did not see in myself, because I had this label on myself all of these years. So I'm the student that has to work extremely hard to get the grades that I received. Science and technology, I've always had a love for it, but because I was never the A student, you kind of sit on the sideline and, I'm a kind of quiet. So, when you're the quiet person, you kind of flow under the radar. So I floated under the radar, but I knew that I was going to be in the industry of technology and science. So I did everything that I needed to do that. Thank God that my grandparents and my family members, they exposed me to different things. So I would come up to the DC area from the age 7. And just to see so many African-American people of stature in different areas and different things of that nature, again, gave me motivation when I went back to Liberty City and saw what I saw. So with that, I always try to tell every young person, you see the vessel, but there's always a story behind that vessel. And you don't being a product of your environment, it's not something that you have to embrace. You may have to work a little harder, and stop the negative self-talk when you are potentially labeled. And based on those few things, I was able to, continue to thrive educationally and professionally because I've always had to remember those educators that poured into me at these inner city schools, at my HBCU, that allowed me to pursue higher levels of education.
Very insightful, very insightful. So what were discussions like in your household surrounding where you were planning to attend college?
So I'll start. I have the mic. So in my household, education was always important. I am the first HBCU college graduate. Many persons in my family attended school, but they didn't finish. So I'm the first to finish college, attain a master's degree and an MBA and a PhD, which has broken the generational curse in my family. Was it difficult? Was it hard? It was difficult. But I can say that my grandmother instilled in me the importance of always questioning everything. If you have a question, ask. Figure out how something works. I'm not going to tell you everything. My grandmother didn't have me in the kitchen, so I don't probably cook the best because she wanted me to do something other than being a homemaker. Not saying that's a bad thing, because it's not, but based on how she grew up, she wanted me to do something else and just challenge myself a little bit more. So I went to summer school voluntarily growing up because it was just something to do if we didn't go on vacation. I was active in clubs, active in different things that I knew could expose me and get me out of Liberty City. And my grandmother, she supported that. Again, I wasn't raised also by my mother and my father. So I was raised by my grandmother, my grandfather, and my aunt. So again, not having this ideal family situation and all these other challenges just pushed me a little bit more to want to go outside and get outside of Liberty City and see what else there was, which again, why I chose to go to school outside of Florida. Because again, I knew that it was something bigger. And I've always had this idea, even at my age now, that there's always something bigger. And there's always something more that we can see, we can do, and we can learn to continue to just thrive educationally. So for me, education is something that I still do to this day. Despite all the accolades and the degrees, I feel like there's always something that I can learn.
So in my home, education was always talked about. My parents always wanted us to have more than what they had and to explore opportunities that were not presented to them. My mom came out of school 1970, I believe, but in her household, it was when you come out of school, when you graduate from high school, get a job. You go into the workforce. My dad, when he graduated from high school, it was either you go into to college or you go into the military. So he didn't go directly into college. But for us, that was the conversation that was in the home. You don't have to go out right into the workforce. Go off to college, expand your education. It also helped that during the time, A Different World was on TV. So we got to see on TV what it was like to live a college life. Also in my church family, there were people in the church family who had attended college. And so we had the opportunity. I was going to Morgan Homecomings when I was a little girl. My uncle would take us. Friends from the church would be there. And so that opened my mind up to college. I have an older brother and a younger sister. And so that was always preached in the home. Either when you graduate from school, you can do military or you can go off to college. They really push college for us. I am not a military person. I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. to do no 3-mile run and have you yelling in my face. I would rather get up in the morning and go to a class, be around my friends, and meet new people. And so they just instilled that into us, and not just, don't stop there. Because what you'll see is that there are a lot of students, when you go to a graduation and you see thousands of kids that's graduating with their bachelor's degree, and then you look and you see almost the same amount with master's degrees, that right there will push you to say, for me, I didn't want to just be in the regular crowd. I wanted to always go a little bit higher. And that's what our parents instilled in us. You want to set yourself apart from everyone else. So everybody can graduate from high school, but not everybody can make it to the next level and finish that program for for college. So having that in my mind, having a competitive mindset and always wanted to excel. I had girl cousins behind me, so I knew I had to set the bar. And so I set the bar by going off to Morgan State University. I'm a homebody. I didn't want to go away. But I have a sister behind me who went to A&T, another cousin behind me that went to A&T, another cousin behind me that went to Tuskegee, another cousin behind me that went to North Carolina Central. So we all kind of excelled and went and spread our wings at HBCU.
I'll say I was probably just different growing up amongst all my cousins, and then I had one sister. So my household was very supportive. My mom was a disciplinarian, very supportive, but my dad was military and very laid back. He never pushed military on us. He never pushed college. It wasn't until later in life that my dad, even after I graduated college, that he finally told me he aspired to go to UCLA and just couldn't go because of money. So he went to the military. I knew that my parents didn't have a lot of money. I had a great home, loving home, had everything I needed, all the support, but I knew from a very young age that if I wanted it, I had to go get it. In terms of my grades, SATs and everything. And I knew that from very, very young. I loved school, and I just looked around, it was probably when I got in middle school where everything was sort of integrated. They were busing in kids from all over. And I'm going to school with kids, and we're at the lunch table, and they're like, my sister goes to Cornell. My sister goes to Spelman. My brother goes to Stanford. And I'm just looking around, and that was my first exposure to HBCUs. Knew nothing about it. I grew up right near Howard. Used to go up to Howard all the time. Sometimes when we had a day off at school, maybe 16, 17, we used to go up to Howard, sneak around. Everybody was walking around with suits on and briefcases, and we used to just try to blend in, like we go there, Never did it really dawn on me like the HBCU thing. Like this, it was never a thing to me. It was just normal. Morgan didn't know much about it. A lot of people in my school, I grew up in PG County. A lot of people in my school, we actually went to an open house. Took a whole bus in 12th grade. Went to an open house. I walked around. I saw all these people from, playing rec ball, people from high school, people from all over the county. I'm seeing them there, and I'm like, I don't want to go here. This is too much. Too many. I've known you all my life, so I wanted to go away. So I would just say, growing up, we didn't talk about college a lot. I just knew it, that I wanted to go. I think my parents knew it. They were supportive. I was kind of smart. So everything I said I wanted to do, they're like, yeah, you'll do it. They supported me. But I wish I'd had more discussions, because when I made my college list, it didn't have HBCUs on it. It was Temple. It was Miami. It was Maryland. It was, my one goal was I knew I wanted to do engineering. So it was a top engineering school. I want to go to top engineering school. I didn't know anything about HBCUs. We didn't have that whole, culture and history talking about that in my household. But for me, it was just what I wanted to study. So I picked my schools based on that. And then in visiting and all that, I learned along the way kind of what really an HBCU was when I visited. And that's what kind of got me and hit home.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I think for me, so I have to tell you, I think we're all unique in our own way. And I love that. So I'm what you would call a first generation American-born person. My parents are from Honduras, Central America. Has anyone been to Honduras? No, raise a hand. Yeah, maybe kind of. Yeah, maybe. So I was born in New York, but I was raised in Boston. And while it was implied that you went to school, but a lot of immigrants come here with a different perspective, a different set of experiences. It's different. So I didn't have that, I guess you could say, understanding of HBCUs or going to school and what have you. But there's one thing that I would tell you in middle school or high school that is so important to have, and that's a commitment to curiosity, to want to learn, to know that, what I see is not an extension of who I am. And as Dr. Campbell mentioned, because you come from an environment, or you may be around, you have siblings or hear voices or things that don't necessarily propel you into going into STEM or to being connected to great programs like the Ingenuity Project, You can be so much more, particularly now. I mean, to grow up, to be a teenager in 2021 is so cool. It's difficult. I'm not going to trip, right? I know. I mean, with the stuff, but I also know that because we know more as a people, Black people, we can do so many wonderful things. So I didn't have a great environment, but I know that my commitment to curiosity, my commitment to want to be that critical thinker is really, really important to where I'm at today. So,
Wow, thank you.
sure.
I noticed that all of you went to historically Black colleges, and some of you also have attended predominantly white institutions. May you please share some of your experiences, especially the contrast between PWIs and HBCUs?
Does anyone want to take a swap? You can end with
Just
me.
pass it down. So Jalen kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of proximity and size of Spelman and Harvard, right? So I would liken this comparison to this. Like, if you need toothpaste and toilet tissue and you go to Target, right? You might walk into the Target, you'll be greeted, you might say hi to a few people, good morning or hello along the way. People might be very nice. You go in, you'll get what you need, check out, and had a great experience, right? You got what you needed, you go home, it was all good. Think about if you went to a smaller market, a corner store, and you walk in and, you're greeted by the owner, right? He's behind the cash register. He says, how can I help you? You say, I'm looking for toothpaste. He say, come on, I got some options. He walks you over to the toothpaste. He explains the different types of toothpaste. He shows you some other products. And then you realize that this smaller store has everything that the Target has. And I'm talking to the owner, right? And then you leave the store. Now you know this owner by first name basis. He's actually in the community. So you see him as you're walking to school every day. Hi, Mr. Jones. That's what the difference was to me. I think both schools probably have everything you need. You'll probably walk out of your PWI. You can go in. You can not have a conversation with anyone. I used to just go to class, come in and out. I was working at the same time. I didn't join any clubs. Nobody reached out to me and tried to pull me to any clubs. So it was just a little bit different. I was also in my master's and very focused when I was at the PWI as opposed to undergrad. But at the HBCU, it was like, you're coming out of there on first name basis with leaders. Those leaders are also, a lifetime network for you. So when you go start a job, you can call back to Morgan. When we're doing things like this, we have connections. We can call Morgan. Hey, I'm going to speak to some kids on STEM. What can you give me? What can you tell me? There are people that I can call. I've been on several boards at Morgan where they bring my professional experience back, but it's just that network of, first name basis, lifetime connections, and things like that. My PWI, where I did my master's, I don't really talk to anybody. I don't go back. I might donate here and there. I see that they're doing really great things, so I pay for my alumni membership. I get the magazine every month. I read it, but that's about the difference. So, if that gives you an analogy.
So one thing I can say about going to Morgan, I felt like Morgan was family. From the moment I stepped on campus for summer orientation, we had to register for our classes in person. And so you kind of went with your major to register for your classes. And I remember the same people I registered that summer for my classes were the same people I graduated from Morgan with. And we went through our matriculation together. Because we all had the same major, they knew people who were ahead of us. We knew people who were coming behind us. When it came down to do work, we did everything in a group. We studied in groups. We did projects in groups. We, if the person had the class the semester before us, they would just hand their notes down to us the next semester because HBCUs wasn't big on changing books too often from semester to semester. And so, but it was that family feeling that you got when you went into a classroom or stepped onto the campus. I also found that the professors were a little bit more compassionate. They would be firm, but they were very compassionate and understanding. So my senior year at Morgan, I started co-oping at SSA. I had to work full-time my fall semester, but because I wanted to graduate on time, I still carried a full load. I was still full-time at Morgan. So I had to go to school at night and I had to go to school on Saturday. So imagine working 40-hour work week, going to school in the evening, and then in school Saturday from 9 to 3. So it was a little bit of pressure there. But I remember having a tough time in one of my classes, and I just, I broke down. My professor came in the hallway and talked to me and said, Nicole, it's okay. Don't worry about doing your presentation today. You could do it next week. That same compassion, I did not get that at Towson University. It was very structured. They were very firm. They didn't believe in sharing notes. I was sometime, it was only maybe 2 or 3 Black people in the class. So whereas at Morgan, it was like, hey, can I get the notes for this? Can I get the notes for that? At Towson, if I ask my personal right, do you have the notes? I do. But I think you could go look on page whatever. And I would be like, well, you can't, can I get a copy? Can you email me a copy? Oh, I don't think I can do that. But at Morgan, it was before email, let me go make you a Xerox copy. Let me get these notes to you. So it was definitely more of a family feeling. Even going to the football games, it was more energetic. Just the halftime shows, all of that was different. And even now, I don't go back to Towson homecomings. I do go back to Morgan homecomings, and meeting up with my classmates or people who I know that have graduated from Morgan or just went to Morgan. It's still that same family feeling. And it's true. Everyone looks like you. People are trying to help you excel to the next level, and you don't feel like you're just a lone man or lone woman out there by yourself.
I think many of the panelists you kind of summed up kind of the contrast. Jalen made a point that really stuck out for me. Being foundationally, I call my HBCU experience was the foundation that kind of put the deep roots into me matriculating to other advanced degrees. But for that time period, I took 5 years to graduate from college because I made a couple mistakes. I failed a couple statistics classes a couple times, so it wasn't a perfect journey. But I was never discouraged not to continue on. They found money for me to continue. My parents wasn't happy about it, but I had people on that campus that was willing to work with me to see me through. Unlike the other universities that I went to, which is Nova Southeastern and Strayer University, I was a number. But I can say foundationally, I excelled in both of those programs academically because I was equipped during my 5 years at the Alabama State University. So from that perspective, that's the biggest contrast for me. And taking those 5 years and being in a space where there were other people that looked like me, I needed that because I had grown up in an environment where I was not the majority. I was always the minority, one being economically, sex, and race. So for those 5 years, it was my utopia because I got to be just in an environment where people that looked like me that had the same foundational goal, which was to get an education, to pursue their dreams and their goals. And from that, we've all propelled to different areas of our life. So for me, that was the biggest contrast from attending an HBCU and a PWI.
Thank you. I noticed a lot of you all spoke on a sense of familiarity and a sense of family during your time at HBCUs. Did you see that same sense of family compassion when you entered the STEM field?
I have some stories there. Because again, in the STEM field, I think we said, I've always been the only one at the table. So imagine starting out your career being the only Black woman in a room where there are Indian and white men. And there may be 1 or 2 women, but they are typically a little bit more, they're part of the boys club. So in this respective field, now it's probably not as much as isolated that way, but I believe there's still some spaces where you will probably be the only one. And being the only one, you will be questioned, you will be challenged, and you have to always ensure that you are rising above and putting forth the best effort in everything you do. There have been instances where my work has been taken and given to other persons that have taken credit for it, which has been very hurtful. It's very hurtful. But then there have been times where I knew how to advocate for myself. I knew how to sit at the table and ask for the salary that I knew that I deserved. Even when my counterpart probably was getting paid that years before. So I've dealt with a couple of different things to where I've learned where I needed to excel in certain spaces. But being a woman, being a Black woman, it's going to be a challenge if you're choosing this STEM field. And you just have to always know that you're capable, you're qualified, and you're deserving. And you do that by being passionate, continuing to educate yourself. Don't ever stop learning if you're in the STEM field, because every 6 months there's something new. There's something new, and you have to always be on top of it to remain competitive and seen in the industry. So that's one tidbit I would give to you.
So same as Chantel, it wasn't easy for me. Starting at SSA, my division that I'm in now was predominantly white. We had 4 branches, and in each branch you may have had maybe 25 people. And out of 25 people, it seemed like the max was 2 to 3 Black people. And so when I remember when I interviewed for the co-op program, it was maybe 10 people sitting around a table. They were all white, and I was the only Black young woman sitting at the table. And for some people, that can be intimidating if you're not used to that environment. And, you know, it can be. But because I grew up in, this is where I pulled from my experience at St. Matthew's, which is now Cardinal Sheehan, because I was used to being in that environment growing up. I just pulled from that. And also my parents just instilled a lot of good things inside of me where I thought highly of myself and that I knew I could do it. But what I find now, even now, I've been with the agency for 22 years, you still deal with some of the same stuff. You still have to fight to get your point across. You still have to, give 150%. You can't, your counterparts, your white counterparts and Indian counterparts, they can kind of do just enough and get the high recognition, but you find that you got to go above and beyond. I'm always double checking my work. I'm always saving all of my emails, because if I find sometimes I'm always proving myself no matter how many years I have in this field. And I find that I always go above and beyond. I take all of the training classes that they put out there. I volunteer for all of the mentor programs to be a mentor, because I know what it felt like for me coming into the federal government. And I found a mentor. So that's one thing I would suggest. When you're going into this field, find somebody who's in the same field that you are, that can pour into you and that can help lead you and guide you in this field, because it's not easy. You're going to run up against the Cornells, the Harvards, the Johns Hopkins. You're going to run up against all of them. And sometimes when they see that you're from an HBCU, they're looking at you as second best. They're looking at that you didn't receive the same information, whether you graduated magna cum laude, summa cum laude, whatever. To some people, it does not compare. But just always, if you know your information, one thing that people cannot take away from you is your education. Once you have it, you have it. And prove it to them. Don't ever dim your light for anybody when it comes to IT. Because when them people get in that room, they're going to shine. It doesn't matter if you shine or not. So you always, when you get out there, tell my son, give it your all, give it your best. Make sure you shine and prove to them what you know. Don't just do just enough. Always go above and beyond when you're in this field, because it's super competitive. I see more diversity now as time has gone on, but even still with that diversity, I still have to go above and beyond every day.
So hit on some really good points. I think continuous learning is a big one. Being passionate, being prepared. So I would say be prepared, right? When you come out of an HBCU, I felt like we were very prepared. We were confident, like super, super confident. I think an HBCU more than anything will get all the confidence out of you when you go into your interviews, everything. The other thing about an HBCU is that we had a lot of companies that come to HBCUs. A lot of big name companies come there to recruit. So don't ever think that because you go to an HBCU that you won't be seen. It's almost like if you were a football player and played D3, if you're good, they will find you, right? So, and it's not even that hard to find an HBCU. They know who we are and they're there. Coca-Cola, Motorola, like all, Hopkins, all the top government agencies, FBI, everybody's there. National security, they're all there. I recruited after I left Morgan, I don't know, for 10 years, I kept coming back, recruiting more students, right? Telling the people at my job that you guys need to recruit at Morgan. Why are you not recruiting more at Morgan? There was one point where I was at JP Morgan Chase, top financial firm. They were not recruiting at Morgan. but they came right past Morgan and went to Maryland and Stevenson and Towson and all the other schools. I said, Morgan has one of the top engineering schools. They said, well, do you want to go down with a recruiter and help? Sure, I'll help. First year, we brought three students. They excelled. They got offers to come back second year for internship. The next year, we said, well, how many can we get? Well, bring as many as you can. Brought back 12 interns. They did well. Many of them became employees at that time, flipped to employees. Some of them, came back year after year. The third time around, I think we brought almost 19 students back from Morgan to work at JP Morgan Chase. Some were in New York, Delaware, all over. So the point is, there's a lot of recruitment that comes there. I think coming out of the HBCUs, we're very prepared. When we go into these companies, when I came out, I felt like there were a lot of African-American students, in the field, but they don't stay. I think for whatever reason, the patience that it takes, the continuous learning, a lot of what we talked about, some folks are not cut out for that. Some folks don't want to do that work, that heavy lifting that it takes to continue. So you have to do that. And I just say right now in STEM, I don't see a lot of us. You mentioned, Dr. Campbell mentioned, sometimes she's the only one at the table. I know I am. In leadership a lot, we're the only ones at the table. There was a point where Mr. Neal and I worked at the same company. We both popped up around the same time, came in, I don't know, as consultants or something like that, but there weren't many of us. But as two African-American men, we came in sharp, dressed every day, spoke up, head up, chest out in the meetings. We came in prepared, we showed up. So, respect he and I have always had. And then we saw each other later in life. It's that same respect because I, remember back when we worked together, we were two sharp dudes, right? We represented well. But again, it was the HBCU, the confidence I felt like we came in with. We had side conversations. Oh, you with Howard? Yeah, with Morgan and AT. So, we talked about things. But that's another thing about HBCU is like you can go to different schools, but that it's the same sort of situation. I went to two HBCUs, and I can tell you, same situation. When I talk to Neal about Howard, we're talking about the same things. We can relate to the same things. So keep that in mind as well.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The question was, how do you feel the sorry, I forgot the question.
I know. Imagine
How did your HBCU experience translate into the STEM field?
Yeah. So it was instrumental in the sense that you're part of a community. It's about relationships, right? But because STEM can look different for different people. So it's not just coding is great. Python, Linux, learning an off-the-shelf application, go for it. But for me, it really built the confidence to know that I can effectively compete. I've got the aptitude to learn. And even though an HBCU may not have all of the resources, the robotics labs, those things, those widgets, those bells and whistles, but it's what's within you. And I'm thinking what I'm hearing from the panelists, a recurring theme is that it really starts with having this desire to want to learn, this lifelong learner. I mean, we're all pursuing certifications, finding mentorship, all of these things. So even as middle schoolers or high schoolers, as you start to think about college, it's you. So it starts with you. It's that thing that's within you. So whether you go to a Howard or a Morgan State or a Spelman or Towson, it's really that desire to be the best that you can be. It starts with personal excellence, right? So I think that's the thing that differentiated me. And that's the thing that fuels me to this day, 25 years later, having graduated from school, that says, hey, what is that thing that I have to do to be the best version of myself? So.
Absolutely. I've just been given word that unfortunately we are running a little bit short on time. So this will be our last question. But I've noticed that the narrative that you're the only one at the table in the STEM field has been reiterated. So the question I have is, how do we see more STEM industries, and I know Dr. Meadow spoke on this, but how do we see more STEM industries incorporating more women and men of color?
Wow, I'm going to be really quick on this one. So it's interesting. What I hear, you're going to hear companies say this word, we can't find qualified Black people to work. There's a pipeline issue. So I had a recent conversation. So I said, I've got an idea. I got a wonderful idea. What if we went to the high schools? What if we went to the universities and said, hey, listen, we don't have to. I've had companies in Vietnam, India, South America, because it's really hard finding qualified folks who are technologists. So I think what companies who are really committed and what we need to do is really voice our concerns and reaching back to our Ingenuity programs, out to Morgan State, out to Coppin, to Howard, and says, hey, listen, you can start right now where you're at, through the internships, through the exposures, do this versus that. I think we've got to be very intentional and very deliberate in terms of what we do. Otherwise, that gap's going to widen, because you do make more money in this field, but you've got to be very deliberate and have that voice. So,
yeah, I'll be quick as well. I think Neil hit on it a second ago when he talked about, starting inside with you, right? The self-motivation, you kind of wanting this, it starts young, right? If you get into STEM, you're in these programs, Ingenuity and things like that, take it seriously, get the most out of it, make the connections. You have the ability to connect with, the leaders of the Ingenuity program, your principal, all that. You take it to the next level, right? And then you got to reach back and start talking to eighth graders the same way that we're doing it. Then when you get to college, you got to reach back and talk to, high school kids. When you get to the work field, you got to reach back and help those kids get recruited. But I think truly getting people to stay in the STEM field, starts now, like with that love for math, that love for science. When you get to college, you do engineering. I took 6 physics and 6 math classes, 7 physics, something like that. Doesn't stop. So if you don't have a love for it now, for that math, that science, on your darkest times when it's hard, it's going to be hard to not change your major. It's going to be hard to not change your job. I know so many people that got out of engineering and IT because they wanted to do other things. I know guys that are DJs now, photographers. I know young ladies that have gone on to be cosmetologists. Some just went and studied law. Like, people just get out and go do other things. But I think, some folks just use it to make, like you said, make a lot of money. You look at the money and get in. It can be a longevity career, but it really starts now. And every level, you got to reach back and start, get that continuous cycle of, more people coming up. But you got to love it at this level right now.
I definitely agree with everything that they've said. Being a woman in STEM, and not seeing as many women that there could be in STEM. I think for us, it's more of reaching back to young girls now. There's like Black Girls Code and some other STEM programs for women, and just really encouraging. I have a son, so, I'm always pushing in his mind, look at this field, because it's ever evolving. And it's different parts to STEM. You don't have to code. You don't have to do all of that. You could do other different science and technologies, and you could do other things in it. Graphic designing is something. So if you're into, the whole computer drawing, it's just different areas. So I would say definitely look at the different areas, reach back. So the way I do now with reaching back in the position that I have at SSA, I have hiring. I can hire people. So when I'm looking at applications and I'm looking at my staff, I give the person from an HBCU an opportunity, or my staff that I now make sure I don't ask them if they want to be a part of a training program. I just let them know I signed you up for this training program. Because sometimes when you give children options, just like children, you give them options, they may say, no, I don't want to do it. But I find that with my son, there's no options. This is what you're going to do. Sometimes with my staff, when I talk to them, I gently say, no, you're going to take this class. This will definitely benefit you, because you can sometimes get stuck in that rut. But just finding ways to educate people, mentoring them, reaching back, helping them get to the next level, that's something I see that will help us bring more women and more Black women into this field.
Just in closing, I guess, as many of the other panels said, it's reaching back. Just a small story. During my time at eBay, there was no segment for women to have a space to voice our concerns. So what I did, I raised the question, why don't we start a group of women just within eBay to get together in technology. That organization is now called EWIT. And EWIT is a place for women in technology within the eBay, PayPal arena that can come together of all colors to voice our concerns and help each other and uplift each other. Because another thing I'll share with you as a woman, a white woman and a black woman, those are two different things. They're two different things. And there'll always be two different things, no matter what. So just remember that. Being a mother of I have a daughter who goes to all-girls school. She loves STEM, but her area of STEM is more of robotics. I wasn't good with the robotics piece. I'm more of the coding piece and things of that nature. So again, it's pushing her into whatever her interest is, knowing that STEM is so much bigger. And for the women that are interested in it, the young girls, start getting that passion for learning now. You all have so many tools available to you all that we didn't have. I would be at a computer crying my eyes out. You all have so many different things that you all can leverage to help push you into that arena. So I really challenge you to do so. But again, it's also reaching back, as Nicole mentioned. You find that 7th grader, that 6th grader that's interested in it, bring them on with you to the club that you go to, or, start to play the roadblocks with them, invite them to play roadblocks, or whatever it is that you all are doing that's STEM related. So again, you're reaching back, you're always reaching back. So that when you get to a place of leadership, you can extend that hand to someone else.
Now, I'd like to thank our panelists for their time as well as their insightful answers. Now it is time to open up the floor for our audience to ask some of our panelists any of their questions.
Well, thank you. That was a wonderful panel. But I wanted to know, was there any extracurricular activities you did at your HBCU that you enjoyed the most, that brought enjoyment to being there?
So for me, I enjoy being a part of, I enjoy volunteering. I've been volunteering since I was 9 years old. So I took the philanthropy route. I joined the various clubs that are focused on philanthropy. We had something called like the student engagement, where we welcomed new students coming to the school to kind of get to learn more about Alabama State. I attended all the parties. The get-togethers. I learned how to play spades. So all of the social gatherings are things that I enjoyed about college. And I think, again, that also gave me an opportunity to have balance, because you need balance. So that was kind of my engagement in college.
So I was a part of the YWCA organization, all the social gatherings, quote unquote parties. So things like that, hanging out in the McCowden Center. I did not pledge Delta or cross Delta until after I graduated. So I did not get to experience Greek life in college like I wanted to, but I experienced it afterwards. So it was more of hanging on the yard, hanging in the McCowden Center, those type of social extracurricular things that I participated in at college.
Between engineering and marching band, that was enough. So I marched 4 years. And every year in college I marched. We traveled, did games, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of practice. It's a lot of hours that go into it. I don't know if people realize that. Between that, I did some of the engineering societies. I didn't hang out and party as much. I just didn't have time, but I did pledge a fraternity a few times. Member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Yeah, that was pretty much it. Being in the band, if there's anybody in band in here, playing the march. If you do, it's a lot of hours, but it's one of the best experiences of college for me. Next to my degree on the wall, I could talk about band all day.
Hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, I played intramural basketball. I would have needed to be about 4 or 5 more inches taller to have played D1 basketball. But it was great. The social gatherings, the get-togethers, just being part of that experience was absolutely amazing. So, any other questions?
So I like a few things. I like the science part still and art, and so I want to do both, but it's hard picking to what I want to do. Because in arts I want to do like film, graphic design, but then in STEM I want to do forensic science and chemical engineering. So what would be the best option for like going to HBCU?
I'll quickly just quickly tap on it. I think you can do both, first and foremost, right? You're at a point where you can actually design what you want to do around your passion. So because when I came up, there were strict lanes in terms of software coding or mainframe applications. But because, it's not just graphic design, but it's graphic design mixed with artificial intelligence, mixed with machine learning, mixed with, film and what have you. So I think that there's a really wonderful opportunity for you to design what you want. And here's the thing, if it doesn't exist, create it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was going to be my answer. You can do both. I think you focus on a school that has a solid accredited program for what you want to study. I would say also, what grade are you in? Eighth grade. I would say start now, learning tools, learning everything about graphic arts and forensic science, because there's a lot that you can do now that you'll realize you can do on the side. So when I was coming up, I was doing engineering, but I was still doing music. I was cutting hair, in the dorm. I was making spaghetti and selling it because I needed money. But there's tons of things that you're going to be able to do on the side on your own time, and you'll start to, invest in yourself in your spare time. You can do that now. So take all your free hours, get on the computer. You guys have so many more resources than we had. A lot of us, we had to go to books and libraries and microfiche and all that stuff. I date myself. But there's a lot that you can do right now, like on the weekend, today, to start investing in your own time and whatever you want to do inside.
Another thing I would say, before you start looking at colleges, start looking at the different high schools. See what options you have for high schools. Everybody does not make it into Poly, the cities, the Westerns, but there are also the technical schools. So there's like Western Tech, there's Eastern Tech. The Mervos, the Carvers. I know, my dad graduated from Mervo, so he graduated from a technical school, but my dad did really well for himself coming from out of that school at that time. So look at what the different high schools offer and the different programs that they offer, the pipeline to the different colleges that they offer. Look at that also and what it takes to get into those schools. Because what happens sometimes going into middle school, some kids goof off 6th, 7th grade, and then 8th grade, they want to hit the books. But really, your 6th grade, 7th grade is what they're going to look at. 8th grade is like too late. So just start looking at your different high school options, what they have to offer in high school, and the different programs. But I say go for all of it. You can have dual degrees and however you want to do it, just do it. If you have the mental capacity, the educational capacity to do it, and you have the family support system, go for what you want to go for.
And then I would like to add, Micah has a summer program where I'm actually know the dean of Micah, I believe that's the name of the school, where they have a program where it kind of infuses the graphic arts and the technology piece in there. So I'll get your information and pass it along to you, because during the summertime here in Baltimore, again, there's so many programs that you guys have that are free for Baltimore City public school students that you want to take advantage of. And when you said that, I thought of that program immediately because she was looking for students to kind of get into that program. So I'll give you that information when we're done here. I'll get you information.
I know you guys talked a lot about like what kind of drew you to choosing an HBCU, but I wanted to know like what was the main factor that made you stay? Like was it like the community sense that you were talking about, or was it like personal drive and like perseverance type thing?
So you're asking what made us stay at the HBCU that entire time? For me, it was the community, but to be honest with you, I'm not good with change. So when I find what I like, I'm going to stick with what I like. I can't bounce around schools like that. So Morgan had what I liked. I made friends immediately. I felt just like this was home. Morgan really felt like home to me. So once I got there and I got ingrained into it, and my studies and the social aspect of it, that's what made me want to stay at Morgan. I actually love Morgan State. When we sing that song, I'm so glad I went to Morgan State, I really mean it with all my heart when I sing that song, because it just, just the experience that I had there. I didn't have any. I hear some people, they go off to some colleges and then they don't like it, they don't fit, and then they have to transfer elsewhere. I didn't have that there. Some people go off to colleges, grades don't stay up, so they got to transfer closer to home. I didn't have that at Morgan. I just felt like my professors were really good. My classmates were really good, and just the whole experience was good for me.
Real quick. So when I grew up, I think along the way, elementary, middle, high school, it was one word competition. So in every level for me, there were other kids getting good grades and going in that same direction I was going in, and I wanted to beat them. I wanted to be better. I wanted to, be in the mix. So for me, it was competition. When I got to an HBCU, I felt like Morgan had one of the top engineering programs out there. They don't have as many types of engineering, but one of the top, best of the best. And there was just this attitude that you're not going to fail here. You're going to, like, there was no thought of if I'm going to graduate or if I'm going to get a job, or if. There was no if. There's just a when. Like, you can get out, sooner rather than later. You got a date, you're marching and you're driving toward that date. So, there was a lot of competition in the program. When I was in high school, I went to high school in PG County at Largo High School. At Largo High School, we didn't have an engineering program. So when I got to Morgan, it was like all these kids from Poly who had been studying engineering for years. And, they're walking around the classrooms, chest out. They're meeting up with each other after class. And I'm like, hey, can I be down? And it was cool, but they were like already a family. So it was competition. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna show you that Largo can be up there with Polly too. So, that was my thing. It was competition. So I never, thought about not staying, or it was just like, man, I'm here to stay. And like, there was just this no fail attitude in the competition of like-minded people, African Americans going in the same direction.
I'll be brief. Hey, so for me, it's the reason that really fueled me. It's really awareness. It's awareness of the alumni and the wonderful people that graduated from HBCUs. After awareness is a responsibility to be committed to finishing. And then there's accountability. So whether you're at Poly, if you're part of the Ingenuity program, if you're in an independent school, realize that when you think about living in this area in Baltimore City, you are so fortunate to have these experiences. So that's the awareness, and to know then, hey, what am I going to do with this opportunity? That's the responsibility. And then lastly, how are you going to hold yourself accountable? And accountability could be, hey, I want to do something bigger than what I'm perceived to do. So I think for me, that's where it started. I said, I've got to finish. It's not going to be easy. So whether you're going through middle school, high school, those difficult courses, you have a responsibility for yourself first and foremost. So
in your studies at colleges and high school, what was the thing that kept you going, or inspiration that made you keep doing what you're doing? Because sometimes the work can get hard, but you can still keep pushing through it to where you are right now.
Yeah.
So what would you say be the best inspiration for that?
So for me, it's very personal. As I mentioned, I was born here. My family's from Honduras, Central America. And for me, it was more than just finishing the class. It was more than just getting a degree. But it was knowing that I came from a family that they didn't really have a lot in terms of, in a monetary sense. So I was pursuing something in which my family and my ancestors knew was very important. So I had to say, okay, I didn't get a great grade, or I'm not doing well, but this is bigger than me. And it's hard to see that when you're 15, 16, 17. I know it's really difficult. I can only imagine. But if you can find and think within that moment, okay, everything that you're doing today, it's not always meant for today, but sometimes it's meant for that version of you when you're 19, when you're 20, when you're 21, when you're 25. This thing that adults like to call your legacy. And it's hard to think like that, but that's what compelled me. That's what moved me forward.
Quick one. I think for me, I was first generation to go to college. My parents always wanted to go to college, couldn't for whatever reason. I was one of the younger of my cousins, and nobody went to college. So when I went, while I had my own motivation why I wanted to go, and I knew I wanted to make it for myself, I knew I had to set the bar at least, for my family and everybody that followed, and for my children one day. because I wasn't seeing enough of that as an example when I was growing up. I didn't have people to talk to me about what it was like to be in college in my family. So, I wanted to change the narrative. And in order to do that, I had to go as far as I could, get a master's, potentially get a doctorate. And I just knew all of that was out there for me, and I had to pursue it, and I couldn't fail at it in order to change that narrative.
So I'm gonna be very honest with you. I was not trying to come home to my parents with a bad grade because it was just that it wasn't acceptable in the home. My parents knew our potential and knew we were more than CD students. And so when I would have to take a test or, bring my grades home, even in college, some kids don't have to show their parents their college grades. I still had to give my parents my college grades when they came out on the system. So my parents, first and foremost, I didn't want to disappoint them because I knew how hard they worked to get me where I am at that time, and even today. Then I didn't want to disappoint myself. I had enough pride in myself that I didn't want to get the failing grade. I know what it's like to fail. I have failed. I had to retake an accounting class in college. I had to do all of that. But, when I did fail, it was so disappointing because I felt like not only did I let myself down, but I let my parents down. But now that I'm older and I have my own child, sometimes you all don't realize this until you have your own children. You think your parents are crazy. You think they're hard on you. You think they don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be a child and, blah, 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 blah. I said all of that to my mother and to my father. But now that I'm older and I have my own son, my son is saying the same exact stuff to me. And I'm like, no, son, you won't appreciate what I'm doing for you until you get my age and you have not even have children, but till you get my age. And I appreciate my parents being hard on me. I couldn't do everything else that everybody did. I couldn't party when I was younger in high school like that. I couldn't hang out. But I knew I didn't want to disappoint my parents. And I knew because of how competitive I was and the pride that I had in my work, that drove me to do even better as I was coming through not only high school, but also college.
Adding on to what many of the panelists said, something that I tell all young people that I talk to is start to train your mind for positive, self-motivating talk. You are your biggest cheerleader, your biggest crowd cheer. You are your biggest motivation. I grew up in a very strict home where I too had this high expectation that I was going to do everything that my parents wanted me to do. That's a lot of pressure. But it was only until I started to talk to myself, write mantras on to this day I do this. I write things on my mirror to remind myself that I'm capable, that I'm qualified, that I can do it. Even when it gets hard, it's sitting in that moment for a moment, only a moment. Start to train your mind to start thinking positive thoughts about yourself and where you see yourself. Then writing those things down, and then as you achieve those things, check them off the list. And sometimes you may find you may take a couple steps back, but that's life. You're gonna always do that, but it's how you bounce back from that will continue to propel you. And then also take time to reflect in your achievements. That's something that I'm still learning to this day, to be proud of what you've done or what you've accomplished. Because again, that's something that can get lost when you're continuously trying to achieve goals and make your way. You take time to reflect, to just say, wow, I did that.
Once again, I'd like to thank our amazing panelists. But that will be our segue into our parent and student breakout session, which will be upstairs on the second floor.